Okay, guys, topic 4, project estimating and costing. This aspect is another important area that we need to understand, right? You need to be able to cost a project to know how much amount that needs to be set aside in form of budget for you to be able to complete a project, right? And so much fun about this particular verse in the Bible. I don't know exactly where it is, and I can't quote it exactly the way it is written in the Bible. I think it was Jesus Christ that was saying that in the Bible, that before a builder, right, start constructing, building the house, the builder must sit down and calculate how much it's going to cost, right? So you must know that so that you will be able to complete it, because it will not be good at the end of the day or during the process of constructing the building. Then the resources get finished, you will not be able to complete it. It's in the Bible. When I saw that thing, I said, you see, costing, project costing is very important. And Bible, or rather the biblical book of the Bible, it contains a lot of wisdom. You see, if you are someone that read the Bible very well, you're going to be very wise. There are a lot of stuff in the Bible. So estimate it. What we are going to talk about today is in the Bible. That a builder must sit down and know how much his house is going to cost before he starts building, because it wouldn't be good if at the end of, before the project finish, the resources get exhausted, and it will be something that will be disheartening, that will not sound well. So now, like I said, we need to know the elements and resources to be costed in a project, right? The element here could be the task that needs to be costed in a project, as well as the resources that needs to be expended, right? The task, in executing the task, you need to uh, put in place, you need to put in effort, right? Remember what we said? We said project is an effort to produce something, right? Under a particular period of time based on the determined budget. That effort, which is man hour, or that can be represented in form of man hour, labor, needs to be paid for. Do you understand what I mean? Right? Resources needs to be expended. Those resources will not just come handy, free of charge. It needs to be paid for. So by virtue of the fact that those resources or these resources needs to be paid for, you have to capture them when you are calculating the cost of a project, right? So when estimating the cost of a project, as we have it here, you should analyze the following. What you need to look at, right? If somebody should ask you now, let's say, okay, we are hoping to have maybe 5 classroom block here, another 5 classroom block, right? Can you do the cost of the project? Even if you are a quantity surveyor or a project estimator, there are certain things that you need, that you will ask, you will require for you to be able to know what needs to be done, right? That can as well help you to know what to calculate and how to calculate it, right? You need to look at the scope statement of the project, the scope statement, right? You as a quantity surveyor or a cost estimator, you cannot realistically estimate the cost of a project if you don't know the scope. Remember what the scope of a project is, or rather, what the project scope provides for an estimator to be able to estimate the cost of a project. Because the scope will tell you exactly what needs to be done, right? It will tell you the inclusion and the exclusion, right? The scope as well will detail out the specifications, what needs to be done, the resources that are required, the extent to which you need to go, Everything will be detailed out in the scope statement. Then the work breakdown structure will show you the task, right? What needs to be done, even to the extent of the work package, the lowest uh, activities that needs to be done in a project. Then any project data that can provide you useful information to assist you in estimating the cost of the project in a realistic manner. So when estimating the cost of each work element, what you need, each of these elements must be included. Labor, right? The man hour. Someone needs to do the job, and that person needs to be paid. It's not free, right? Then general and administrative costs. Perhaps you have an office where you have the secretaries, perhaps you have the receptionist, where you do the admin work. It must be paid for, right? Then, of course, the materials that will be involved, right? Yeah, the materials needs to be paid for. If there are materials to be utilized, then the supplies, the small things that needs to be incorporated in the project, the equipment, right? If it is a contractor that is doing the project, the contractor as well need profit, right? Nobody works for somebody for nothing. Nothing goes for nothing. Someone needs to be paid, right? So those things needs to be incorporated in the project while estimating the cost of a project. So here we are trying to unpack it in terms of expanding what resources is all about or trying to conceptualize what resources are. Resources needed for the completion of a work element can be either of these: material, equipment, office space, labor, school, vehicle, computer, time, money. These are some of resources, right? Here, there's one thing I want to explain. There is what we call generic resources. Generic resource, generic. When we say generic, general, it means in any project, such resources are required or such resource is required when we say generic. For example, money. Money is a generic resource. Because there is no project that doesn't need money, right? Skill. There is no project that doesn't need skill. Knowledge and skill is a resource. Time. Is there any project that doesn't need time? Right? Human resource. There is no project that doesn't need somebody to do something. Of course, if it is something that doesn't, where you don't need somebody to do something, it's not a project because effort must be expended for you to classify such initiative or individual as a project. Something must be done, and one somebody must do it. Right? Effort must be earned. Effort must be spent in order for one to be able to accomplish a task that are that need to be done in the project. Right. Then, guys, this thing is very important. I told you that it's very important for one to be able to estimate realistically the cost of a project. Very, very important. You understand what I mean? For example, if you are working in a construction company, you are in charge of costing, right? Costing, estimating for the company, putting prices in tender document. You see, your role there is very, very important because whatever price you put there, the company rely on you. You are the one telling the company this project that we are bidding for is going to cost 12 million, right? They rely on you. And at the end of the day, if they happen to win the bid, the contract, they are going to rely on what you say, right? What if yourself you don't know what you are doing? What is going to happen to that company? It's going to be a big failure. Right. What I'm trying to tell you is this. I remember those days. Personally, I was trained as a quantity surveyor. This is my area to cost construction, costing, right? As small as I was, the company was relying on me. They were not looking at my statue. They were not looking on the way